Hugh Reichlin is a lawyer who has a keen interest in Jewish communities around the world. Over the last decade, Hugh has traveled the globe in pursuit of his passion. Today, we continue with our mini-series, Heritage Travels with Hugh Reichlin, in which he explores the history of the Jewish community of Italy.
The Jews have a history in Italy that goes back over 2,000 years. The first migration to Italy was the Jews that came from Israel in about 161 BCE. That was the time of Judah the Maccabee, when he sent ambassadors across to Rome. There was another migration after the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70 of the Common Era, a third migration during the time of Hadrian, which was approximately 135 of the Common Era, and then a fourth migration in 1492. That was after the Jews were expelled from Spain. There was a migration across Europe, and there was also a migration that went down into Italy. When we were in Milan, known as Milano for the Italians, we went to one of the synagogues, and we went inside and we sat down, and we were addressed by Rabbi Moshe. A young man and his family have been in Italy for approximately 2,000 years. And in fact, he traces his roots right back to the time of Judah the Maccabee. The Via Gustella synagogue, where we met Rabbi Moshe, was built in 1882. And he says that to this day they have at least 100 men praying in the synagogue every Sabbath. We said the afternoon service, we prayed the afternoon service, what we call Mincha. And what was quite interesting was that many of us were observant Jews and we could hardly follow the service. And that was because the style of prayer in this particular synagogue was known as Nusach Italki, meaning it was a traditional Italian Jewish way of prayer, and they have their own prayer book. They have what's called Nusach Italki, which is a very special set of prayers and a way of arranging the prayers that is authentic to Italy. We also went to Rome, where we saw the Jewish community. They have a very big synagogue there, and they have probably the biggest Jewish community in the country. We also went to Venice, and that was the place of the famous Venice Ghetto. Today there are approximately 500 Jews living in Venice, of which about 5 live in the old ghetto. In Venice, there are in fact 5 synagogues in the old ghetto, and they are named after the communities which used to live in the ghetto. There was the German synagogue, there is also the Spanish synagogue, there is the Levantine, that's the Middle Eastern Jews, and each of them are very small, and they have been restored by each of the communities over the years. All of them were built around in the 1500s, the middle 1500s to the early 1600s, and they still function today as synagogues. Not all of them are used at once, but they rotate so that each one has an opportunity to be used by the Jews in Venice. There is a functioning Jewish restaurant in Venice called the Gum Gum restaurant. And it was quite beautiful because when our tour group was sitting in the restaurant, there was a young English couple, a Jewish couple, that were there soon after their wedding, and we were able to celebrate their special wedding event with them just a couple of days after they had got married. We also went to the town of Padua, which was the birthplace of a most famous rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto of blessed memory. And it was a beautiful experience to be able to share with our group some of his teachings in his synagogue, which went back to the 16th century. The synagogue in Padua was hidden in a building. It was not really possible to see it from the street. And when one walked into it, it was very narrow, and it had beautiful wooden pews and the walls were also lined with wood, and it was quite dark, but it certainly gave one the sense that one was walking into an ancient synagogue that had stood the test of time. While we were in Italy, just south of Rome, we went to a place called Ostia Antica. Nobody lives there today, and it's a city of ruins. But we were quite intrigued to see that amongst the ruins, there was a synagogue, or the remains of a synagogue. You could still see the pillars, you could still see part of the walls, and you could still see a partially intact mosaic floor. This particular synagogue is the oldest site of a synagogue in Western Europe today. It was built in the year 100 of the Common Era and has been there for 1900 years. It was only uncovered and discovered in 1961. And this was a very vibrant community. There were about 15,000 Jews in Ostia Antica. I understand that today there are approximately 20,000 Jews in the whole of Italy. Today, Italy is a place of freedom for the Jewish community. They are very patriotic Italians, but at the same time very proud Jews. And there are South Africans, there are many South African families that I know that have connections to Italy.